Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen. If you're watching on YouTube, this is just the Tour de Suisse recap of Stage 6. On podcast players, we've also got the Tour of Slovenia Stage 3 recap, but Tour de Suisse first. Why this is 8 stages, I'll never know. It's kind of insufferable torture right now. Just make it 5 or 6. Come on, Tour de Suisse. Just 5 or 6. You don't need 8. You don't need 2 TTs. Take yourself down a notch, all right? We just had the Dauphiné where the second-tier GC contenders for the Tour de France warmed up. You've probably got Alaphilippe deluding himself that he's going for TDF glory as a fourth-tier contender. Anyway, my gripes aside, this stage was 130 kilometers, 130 kilometers long. Starts with a 8.7k climb, 8.3k climb at 7%, and a long descent and valley section, and then it's like a parabola, and then they do probably the longest climb of the race, the Lukmanier Pass, 18.2Ks at 5.6% descent, and then a sort of false flat, but a bit steeper than that, 7Ks, 3.5% drag to the finish in Dicentis Cedrun. So before coverage started, Benji, there was absolute mayhem. We're looking at the live trackers on PCS or the race website on Twitter. What the hell was going on?
Yeah, we saw an early move by one of the GC riders, Julien Alaphilippe, and he lost 20 seconds yesterday from the bottle incident, but he seemed to be very fired up to get started and rampage on the moment that the race started on the San Gotardo climb, because he went in the break, was together with teammate Cataneo there, and it took a while before the actual group that they were in was completed, and it ended up being a 4-man group in the descent portion of the San Gotardo. They kept that up for quite a while, and the gap was pretty decent. I think it was above 2 minutes at a certain point, and then it went down and went down and it went down. And the moment that Alaphilippe got caught, everything started happening. This was at the foot of the is it Lukmanier's Pass, the second climb in the race. Everything happened there because attacks were flying left and right. And it's a bit unfortunate because we didn't see the attack of Alaphilippe properly on camera at all, which is just a bit funny. But
well, no one knows why he dropped back. I mean, he's in a group with Cataneo, de Klerk, Van 7 on. Well, apparently he sat up. Oh, maybe he had a mechanical. It makes no sense. I was very confused by it. No one really knows what happened because there wasn't any commentary on the GCN feed that I was also watching via VPN, because the rights distribution for this race is an absolute shambles as well. But anyway, Alaphilippe doing Alaphilippe things. Who was the first to attack? It was De La Cruz, Benji? Or no, it was Krohn actually from the base attacked in Søren Kragh.
Yeah, indeed. They started attacking very early, and that was because just after that, a large group formed at the front of the race, like 29 people in total. And I think they tried to get away from that group as well on the climb itself. They tried to push pedals because a rider like Søren Kragh Andersen needs to try and force it on a steady wattage instead of an acceleration at the end, because he's better at that first aspect. I think Krohn could probably do both of them a bit. We've seen him do both already in his racing so far. And just behind the 29-man group, there was the peloton, paced by Ineos at a very moderate pace. The gap went up to 3 minutes from that breakaway to the peloton. No one super dangerous except for like Antoine Tolhoek in there as well, who was on, I think, 2 minutes or 3 minutes in GC before the stage started. So could play a role if they let the gap go out even further, but that eventually didn't come into play. Fun fact, I was actually listening to this in Japanese because next to VPN issues, there was also some translation issue because there was no English commentary on GCN for the first portion of this race. So that was an interesting experience because I don't know Japanese at all. So I didn't hear what was happening from the commentary, so I had to focus on the race itself. A lot of attacks. Søren Kragh Andersen tried again later to open up things. And Matthews was also trying to get in second or third position there, and eventually then got dropped when we saw more moves by Søren Kragh Andersen. But what was the first decisive attack in the front group, you'd say?
I think that the big sort of group that went into the base of the last sort of, I'm going to call it a climb, was Fabro, Tolhoek, Paulus, and it was Fred Wright. And it was saying on the there was also ticker issues with their transponders. It was saying it was Pernsteiner. I was looking at the guy, I was like, that guy's 6'2". That is not Pernsteiner. It was Fred Wright, the British lead-out man for Bahrain Victorious, who isn't actually I thought he'd be at Slovenia leading out for Bauhaus, which is what he's done for great success this year. But he was in the break. Anyway, he was in that group sitting on. Paulus was working a fair bit. I think the main attacks on that last climb were Costa, as well as, who was his UAE? De La Cruz. They were catching De La Cruz as well, but he was pretty much cooked, and Pernsteiner. So Pernsteiner caught back up to them, and then he had a group with Pernsteiner, Costa, and De La Cruz. And I don't know if Hirschi was in the group as well, Benji. I can always see Hirschi in the group as well, but Pernsteiner was doing most of the work. He can't win from the finish, from the sprint, but he gets caught up with by Andreas Krohn, the man who originally attacked. And so we have a group of Pernsteiner, Krohn, and Rui Costa. And behind, you've got riders like Paulus, Hugo Latour, Serrano, Fabro, Toluk, and Leknusund. So some pretty good climbers, guys we might see, like Paulus, I think, is going to, well, there's no race on his program. He was at stage hunting at the Tour de France last year, nearly won a couple of stages. But yeah, group with Krohn and Costa, way quicker than Pernsteiner. So what are you going to do if you're Pernsteiner there, Benji? Because really, this final climb doesn't offer you too much, particularly the last K is pretty much flat.
Well, he's pretty fucked, isn't it? Like, I don't even know what he can do. There's nothing he can do. He can't attack really because they're going to counter him. You know that. And if he attacks, then he probably won't have the acceleration to stay away because he's not exactly the most accelerative rider. So you're basically just the rider that is going to do the lead out today. And you've said to yourself with 5K to go, I ain't winning this. I might as well do these other two a favor and let them figure it out themselves.
Yeah, he tried a couple of times to his credit, but he's a small guy. He's a pure climber, and this finish just wasn't steep enough for him. Costa has won GC at Tour de Suisse multiple times. Andreas Krohn, you might remember from the first stage in the Tour of Catalunya, Volta Catalunya at the start of this year. Remember that stage in the break with Kemna, Sanchez, and Remy Rochas? He won in a sort of upset at the time, his first win. I think even it might have been his first World Tour race. He beat them in a sprint in a reduced group. So he's quite quick, not to be underestimated. For all I know, you all listening remember that. But maybe Rui Costa didn't, because he leads out on a pretty, drag and drafting is very important on this finish. It's not steep. He leads out Andreas Krohn on the right-hand side. As usual, we've got a slightly right-hand bending, and then it straightens up for the last 125 meters. Costa on the right barrier jumps early. Krohn slips into his wheel. Costa knows he's in his wheel. Pernsteiner's gone. Costa then big swing from the right barrier, almost all the way to the left-hand barrier. And it wasn't in a fluid movement either. Krohn's in his wheel, trying to come out of his wheel to the left-hand side. And he starts to close it like Demar did to Sagan a bit last year in that Giro stage when he didn't get relegated. And then I think he checks under his shoulder a couple of times, and he would have known Krohn was there. And then he has another sharper correction to the left. It forces Krohn. He doesn't brake and he doesn't stop pedaling, but he definitely takes the power off the pedals for a fraction of a second as he has to course correct, go to the left sharply, and then try and go back up the space on the left-hand side. And Costa wins over the line. Benji and I immediately were like, red card, 100% sprint deviation, should be relegated. Krohn is furious straight away. You can see him. It's in the Corvos photo on YouTube, shouting at Costa. Costa doesn't look back at him, doesn't even react to say, what are you talking about? Which is, I think that was telling that Costa didn't do that. Secondly, Costa barely celebrated. Thirdly, a Portuguese fan offered him a flag at the finish. He didn't take it. I think Costa knew what was going to come. But yeah, do you see it as remind people what the rule is, Benji, for the umpteenth time?
The moment that you are after launching your sprint, you're not allowed to deviate from your lane, and in doing so, endangering another rider. Now, this rule has several issues. First of all, a deviation was definitely present here. The second thing, danger, that's an issue because that's subjective. What is dangerous? Is pushing someone to the side or forcing them to evade dangerous? I'd say that it definitely could be seen as dangerous today, and I think that it should be applied. But in some occasions, we have situations where it's not as clear, where the gap between the two riders is a bit more, and then it's an issue. So the danger part of this rule is completely undefined and completely subjective, which means that a rider basically has to choose, I should probably crash right now instead of evading, otherwise his deviation is probably not going to get punished. And Today, they luckily went on the right side of the coin and actually put in the fact that Costa is getting relegated from this, which is good. But there's been so many other occasions where it has been on the other side of the coin. The Alaphilippe one last week, the deviation there, yeah, let's be real. It was dangerous in my opinion, because it's a similar situation as today. Matthews had to stop pedaling or he would crash. Kroon had to evade or he would crash. And there's two decisions differently. Alaphilippe did not get a relegation, and your boy today, Costa, did get a relegation, which I'm all for. They should both have gotten a relegation. But the problem here is the rule. The rule is not defined enough to actually say that the people who are saying, oh, Costa wasn't really endangering Kroon, well, it's difficult to say. I say it's dangerous, but someone else might interpret danger differently. So that's issue one. The second issue is one that was reminded to us again by La Flamme Rouge on Twitter. It's a prisoner's dilemma. If you deviate, if you're Costa in this situation, if you deviate and you get caught, you're going to be sent to the back of the group, which is third. So you lose. If you don't get caught, you get the victory. But if he doesn't deviate, he gets second. So might as well deviate, right? The rule basically incentivizes riders to go for the deviation because the punishment is nowhere near enough.
The current system, the game theory sort of rational decision is to deviate. If you're going to lose, if you don't deviate, then you should deviate because, I mean, geez, I'm of the view that if Kroon isn't angry visibly over the finish line, if I presume Lotto Soudal their DS marches straight to the tent of the UCI commissaires and say, hey guys, this is 100% deviation, I need you to look at this right now and sort this out. If those two things don't happen, I think there's a pretty good chance that Costa isn't relegated.
Yep.
We saw, is this worse than the Impey deviation, which literally crashed Stannard the other week at Andalusia? Like, I mean, in terms of the element of danger, Stannard literally got crashed. So the danger element was definitely present, and Impey definitely deviated from his lane. He was definitely sprinting. So it is inconsistent. I'm glad they got it on the right side of it today. Costa knew exactly what he was doing. And I mean, there's other, again, we never know because there's no transparency in the application of the rules. So maybe, we'll talk about this. We were going to talk about this. Sagan getting fined for obstructing a rider. There's like two different rules they could fine him or penalise him under. Yep. Like maybe they fined Costa for obstruction. Or
they probably didn't hear.
Probably not.
I don't think so. The problem with obstruction is that if you're going to start taking it too seriously, then a lead out like Merku, who's sprinting in the way of others on purpose a bit slower, is technically obstructing other sprinters.
And then we look at the Belgian Tour today, so the stage that Caleb Ewan won. Caleb Ewan goes from the left side of the road all the way to the right side of the road, all the way back to the left side of the road. Why is that okay? And I don't have a good answer for you. The only reason it is okay is because he didn't endanger someone because Ackerman couldn't come out of his wheel. And I guess, so yeah, it doesn't really work. Maybe I think the rule basically should be like, Caleb, you're starting your sprint on the left, sprint in a straight line. That's end of story.
Yeah, and additionally next to that, like the entire system with the UCI is also a bit bodged because they're super intransparent about everything. You've got the situation in Baloise Belgium Tour today with the steer of Beat Cycling Club. They've got this special steer where you can like support your forearms on the handlebars, for example. And well, according to a document that Thomas Gent received, a PowerPoint that he shared on Twitter, that specific steer is literally on the PowerPoint saying that it's not allowed, but today in the race it is allowed because they checked with the UCI and they said nothing about it. So that's also an inconsistent application. The people that are the officials of races are not consistently knowing every single aspect of the rules, which is an issue because if one UCI official says it's right and the other one says it's wrong, then there's some problem with the fact that one of them is wrong. And that should not be the case if you're an official in a race like this. You should know the factual rules. And yeah, that's clearly not the case in some occasions. But it's also annoying that they are not allowed to respond on public matters because UCI officials are forced to forward every single critic to the official UCI communications.
Yeah, but I
manager.
emailed them
Yeah.
asking, and they don't say anything. And I remember the one time I did get a response was about the Fulsang leak last year from Cardiff. I got a sort of the response that all the media got. It was interesting though to see, just finishing off the sprint deviation stuff. La Flamme Rouge put out a poll quickly, and I actually laid Costa on bet. I'm such a degenerate. It's getting bad now that live betting's allowed in Andorra, not in Australia. I laid Costa because the result wasn't finished after the finish, because I was like, they will relegate him. The public said 80% yes that Costa should be relegated. So I actually don't think. I think most people want sprints to be cleaned up, Benji. I don't think seeing people swing from side to side it doesn't make it any more entertaining to me. I don't think it fills anyone with joy or increases the entertainment. I think, I think majority of people, maybe if there's an investor you want to invest in, Benji and I will start up a consultancy business for the UCI. We'll become the UCI VAR. Everyone will get relegated that doesn't ride within a 2-inch sort of
No. You had to stop after relegate. Everyone's going to get relegated.
We'll redraft. We should redraft the rules. They need those rules redrafted. Yeah. But anyway, Tour de Suisse Stage 6 is done. Stage 7 tomorrow is the ITT, the second one. There's a bit of controversy about this as well on Twitter last night from Magnus Beckstedt about whether this is safe. It's from Decisive to Cedrun, starting in Decisive to Cedrun, finishing in Andermatt, 23 Ks, and it's literally straight up and down a mountain, but not an out and back. It's down the other side. It's over the Oberall Pass, 9.5 Ks at 6.5%. The gradients are very regular. The controversy is regarding the descent finish, because it goes through the series of hairpins. I'm not sure how steep it is, but there's also a tunneled hairpin, I believe, which could be a little bit sketch, but they'll be on road bikes. And I think hopefully everyone's okay. I mean, if it's dry, I don't think most of the guys who aren't competing for GC won't be really pushing it too much. Who have you got for it, Benji? Because Dennis won't be on the TT bike. Is it Carapaz who gets the advantage back doing this on road bikes?
I hope to see Dumoulin do well. I just don't know if he is remotely near a form to do well there, but I would love to see it.
Does he do it on the TT bike?
Yeah, he's the only rider crazy enough to do it on the TT bike. It's so fucking funny. But that's one of the names that I would love to do well, but I'm completely unsure about. I don't think that the flat TTers will be up for it. I think that I want to try and say Uran for this one as a bit of an outsider. I feel like an uphill climb, a descent, why not? Rigoberto Uran.
Yeah, to win, you'll have to take a lot of risks or push it very hard on the descent. That's what people were having the issue with. And does Carapaz want to do that with the Tour de France so close? Do you think Alaphilippe will push it, Benji, on the descent?
I think they'll all push it. Carapaz, Alaphilippe, they're going to try and win this race. It's a race they want to win. I think that I'm curious what Matthews would do on this time trial, because he's good at shorter time trials. But the climbing section's too hard here, right?
I'll be betting on Jakob Fuglsang to win this stage, depending on when the odds come out.
Really?
I think he'll push the descent pretty hard. And, I mean, I don't know the odds yet. If he's $2, no, obviously I won't. But, I still think Carapaz and Alaphilippe are more likely to beat him. But steady climb, not too steep, and then pushing it on the descent, road bikes, Astana have been good in the TTs. I know it's not a TT bike, TT, but Powers?
Got 11th on the time trial? Cataneo, perhaps, he got third on the time trial.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some weird results tomorrow. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch an unusual TT like this. So tune in for that, and otherwise check out our Tour of Slovenia video and you can continue on if you're on podcast players now.